Hello everyone, welcome back to ALifeLearned. Today I sort of felt the need to share some thoughts and opinions on the Stanford rapist case that a lot of people seem to be feeling the need to share their opinions about. My original exposure to this was actually someone commenting on my impact statement video that I recently released with the article that basically shares the entire impact statement of the person or the victim of this case, and it's really long. So I haven't finished it. I've read most of it, but it's really long. And I've been going through a lot this week trying to write my own statement, so haven't quite had the energy to finish it. But really got the general idea of the story from what I have read. And I've seen a lot of videos of people posting comments since, so definitely know what's going on with that case. And to explain from my video that I just released, I didn't end up reading my statement. It's been postponed because Canadian courts are bullshit to the 30th, so I won't be reading my statement till the 30th. And they've also asked me to revise it, which is why the last week has been somewhat excruciating for me. Because I can very much empathize with the victim of the Stanford case in that writing that impact statement is just so hard. It's so draining. You have to go through what you've been through, the agony that you faced. If you've worked through any level of therapy at that point, I mean, you might have some therapy techniques that can help you stay calm, but generally everything comes right back. So it really sucks. In that sense, it's really, really hard. And having to revise it has been so much harder on me. Like, I really didn't expect. I figured I've been through it, like I've written the bulk of it, I'm just revising it, it won't be that hard, and I just didn't want to touch it so bad. So it was very brutal on me, and I really empathize with the person that went through that. She really had her life ruined for only one night, too. Like, in my case, I'm involved in a court case of 6 years of rape and abuse, but that doesn't diminish what she went through. It was only one night of her life, and it will never leave her, and that's just awful. I feel so bad for her. I really empathize, and I know that she can definitely heal a lot if she gets the right therapy, so that is good, but she's just been through a lot, and that's awful, and thus I can understand why a lot of people are expressing their main opinion of being exceptional frustration that the accused, Brock Turner or whatever his name is, everyone seems to know his name now, didn't get a very impactful sentence in a lot of people's opinions. I'm not going to comment on whether it should have been longer or shorter because I'm not a judge, but I can understand why people feel that way because this has impacted the victim so deeply. And people in society really, very commonly, just share the opinion of justice being punishment. And so everyone feels that he is not being punished basically at all. And I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Again, I'm not going to comment on whether the sentence should have been longer or shorter or whatever. But there's no question that going through the court process for the defendant and the victim is very hard. So everyone trying to pretend that he didn't face some kind of difficulty for going through that process is narrow-minded, in my opinion. I'm not defending him, though. I'm just being neutral and human about the fact that they're both human beings. Yes, he is now considered a rapist, but something that needs to be clarified about the whole situation is everyone keeps saying he flat out raped her, and he most certainly sexually assaulted her, he most certainly took advantage of her, he most certainly assaulted her. But as far as I've read everything, he did not insert his genitals into her. He inserted his fingers into her, and that's terrible. She's still stuck with all kinds of scars and awful feelings and awful post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms that she has to work through because of that. It's not diminishing her trauma by saying he didn't all-out stick his penis into her, but it wasn't all-out rape the way everyone's projecting it was, in that sense. But it's clear that if he hadn't been caught the way he was proceeding to look to rape her, so I'm not denying that. It's just it does need to be acknowledged what did happen. Also, they were both very, very drunk. Clearly he was more conscious than her, though. She was completely unconscious. Wrong, obviously. But that's an interesting thing to note, is one of the most difficult and traumatizing things that this poor girl is dealing with is that she actually can't even remember it happening. She learned about what happened through the news and through others telling her. And I can't imagine the horror of that, of knowing that everyone else knows what happened to you and you don't, but you've definitely got the scars on your body to show for it. And that, you know, as she stated in her statement, you know, she was spread eagle, naked in front of strangers. Like, I can't even imagine the agony of knowing that you went through that and not even remembering. At the same time, having faced 6 years of rape and beatings, I don't know if I'd rather not be able to remember it. You know, dealing with the scars of it, dealing with all of that trauma, that's one thing that she's undoubtedly going through, and I would have gone through no matter what, but I don't know, I kind of wonder if I wouldn't mind not remembering what I've been through. So that's just an interesting thing I wanted to reflect on. But what I really want to get into is everyone's ideas of punishment and the fact that everyone seems to really feel the most shameful situation about this. And the reason it's gotten so big and that everyone knows about it is because his sentence was so small for what he did. And I feel this perspective that everyone is sharing, or most people seem to be sharing, is very limiting. It's not progressive at all towards helping, towards moving forward in life. I mean, what's really the point of punishment? People actually believe that you learn from punishment, but really it only messes with your mental health. I mean, sure, there's consequences for your actions, but that's different from punishment. And so I feel from my own experiences of going through this court process, which still isn't quite done, that the ultimate goal needs to not be for everyone to want him to be further punished for what he did, but for him to be forced somehow to recognize fully and entirely what he's done to her and to himself by doing this act, to figure out why he somehow allowed himself into that situation and why he thought it was okay to take advantage of another person, because clearly there was something wrong there in his brain to think that that was okay. I mean, yeah, sure, he was drunk, but he was conscious enough to do it. She was completely unconscious. So alcohol doesn't really change who you are. It just removes barriers of what you've already thought you'd want to do. So it's like, why does he think it's okay to take from someone without permission? That's what needs to be worked on. And thus my argument here is he needs therapy and he needs counseling and he needs help, psychological help, as does she. She really, really does deserve any and all counseling and therapy that she can possibly get in order to work through the trauma that she's faced. But I don't see where there's any progress and help in understanding the human brain, understanding how he got to that mindset, understanding how to stop future situations like that and stop future mindsets like that from developing by just punishing him. It is very true that there are consequences for your actions, and maybe he should have his freedom to walk about the streets taken from him for a period of time that I'm not going to argue how much it should or shouldn't be, but maybe that should be a thing that should happen, to have him understand there are consequences for such bad actions. But in that time, he shouldn't, in having, himself taken away from his freedom, he shouldn't just be punished. He should be helped. Isn't that the more progressive idea, to help a person? To help him understand how he was wrong? To help him understand why he shouldn't have done that? I mean, I know he's got this little comment in his dad's statement about how he's trying to bring awareness about how alcohol is bad and da-da-da-da-da, but that's so narrow-minded. That in itself shows that he needs more therapy to understand exactly what happened here, because alcohol was a tiny little element of that that evening. It was about his psychology. It was about why he thought that that was an okay thing to do once he had the barriers of social rules basically removed by alcohol, because that's sort of what it does. It makes us break through from that filter that we put up in front of people, and clearly that filter was the only thing stopping him from thinking that he could take from a person like that. That's not okay. He needs help knowing that that's not okay. And just punishing him isn't going to help him figure that out. That's my point. So ultimately, it needs to be recognized that saying this wouldn't have happened to someone if they weren't a white male who was going to Stanford also is in support that he needs to be punished more, but slightly acknowledging that those who are of a different race are treated more unfairly. And so people are, by making a comment like this, acknowledging racism and acknowledging that it is unfair how intense people of color or of any other race are treated in a lot of American courts. But they aren't acknowledging that this shouldn't happen. They're just saying that it should happen to white men too. Like, that doesn't make sense either. If we're going to be progressive about this, then we should acknowledge that the main goal shouldn't be punishment, as I keep saying. It should be therapy. It should be progressing the person's mindset and helping them get help for their clear mental dysregulation, whatever it might be. And this treatment needs to be transferred over into every race, regardless of color or culture or what have you. It doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're white, it doesn't matter if you're Chinese or what have you. You should be treated the same. And that means everyone should be given the opportunity to be recognized as a young person that doesn't previously have a criminal record and thus otherwise shouldn't be a threat to other people. Yes, again, he committed this act, and that in itself shows that he is a threat to other people. But the fact that he hadn't done anything before this shows that he's not a continuous offender, and he is definitely helpable. There is a way that through therapy and through proper opportunities to self-reflect and learn, he can figure out where he was very, very wrong, and he can move forward as a person who has learned from, unfortunately, very terrible experiences of things that he's done. And in that same sense, people of color should be treated the same. They should be given smaller sentences and considered for all the factors in their life the same way that Brock was, instead of insisting that white males be treated terribly. Insisting that everyone gets treated awful doesn't make anything better. It just doesn't. We need to recognize that if Brock was being recognized for having his life get worse if he went to jail, then other people need to be recognized in that way too. So ultimately, I'm not defending Brock. I'm not defending this person that everyone's calling a rapist. I'm also not calling him a rapist. I'm calling him a mentally ill sexual assaulter, because that better describes, in my opinion, what happened and what he did. And I really, really do hope that the victim is able to come to some level of closure within herself, despite how little recognition is being given with his sentence. But above all, I hope that both of them, both the victim and the perpetrator or whatever, are able to get as much therapy, counseling, and help as they possibly can so that she can heal from the trauma that he put her through, and so that he can heal from his very dysregulated mindset that allowed him to think what he was doing was okay. Because I feel it only makes sense to me that that's the most progressive way to move about things, to try and help everyone come to a healthier mindset, regardless of whether they're on the good or bad side, because we all have good and bad sides. And I believe we can all heal if given the right opportunities. So maybe instead of continuing to share all these memes about how he's a rapist and all these different videos and vlogs expressing that his sentence wasn't enough punishment, maybe we should be trying to look deeper into our legal systems and seeing where more recognition into human psychology and people being helped after all the sentencing goes down in making progress with their psychology and learning from what they've done, and both psychologists learning from them and how they got into that mindset might actually be a better way to move forward with society and gradually reduce the number of people who create mindsets like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is just how I've come to see things, because I don't see how hurting and punishing other people, even if they've made the gravest of mistakes, helps anyone understand how they got there or helps them get out of that situation, because ultimately that's why we have a correctional system and we don't just lock people away forever, because we want to help them get corrected. So like, why don't we do that? I don't know. Anyways, if you have any comments about this, please be diplomatic. I really am not a person in a fan of trolling, so if you want to contribute to the conversation constructively, please feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, but do note that I will be deleting anyone who wants to troll me. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your guys' opinions, so do share them with me. And as always, please join me again next week, where I try again to share a little something I've learned in life.